My name is Jess Servion, and I'm super excited to bring you my new podcast, The Juice with Jess. This podcast is going to be about everything in your customer's journey. We're talking acquisition, awareness, making that purchase, retaining that customer, bringing them back around, and everything in between. This is going to be all about delivering dope brand experiences and talking to some really amazing people who are in the customer experience space, the marketing space, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of The Juice with me, Jess. I am currently in New York with my homegirl, Ashley Harris.
Hello.
Who is newly a CX manager at Caraway.
Yes.
However, just ended a role in recent months at Andy Swim, and she's also previously worked at Billy.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about Andy, Billy, Caraway, her CX philosophy, and I'm just super stoked. Ashley, do you want to tell the audience a little bit more about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, so first, super excited to be here. I'm so excited that we finally had this happen. A little bit born and raised in New York. I've been now in startups for almost 7 years, which is kind of crazy. But most recently at Billy, Andy, I think for me, I'm a big pusher of like when you really empower your team and trust your team and like build them up, the service that they provide just is like tenfold.
Absolutely.
And so like that's really a lot of what my philosophy is based on, is like, how do I support my team? How do I make sure they have what they have? How do I make sure the feedback and all like the things are put in place? And I find like that's how you make the customers just like love you and come back and build that bond.
Well, I think it's like all about building the right company culture, right? And
Totally.
It's like about company culture, but also team culture, because I think sometimes too, like you can be in a company, brand, not brand, whatever, big corporate America, like whatever it is, and that the company could have like definitely a culture and their mission and values, but then what happens on your team could be something different and not and
Totally.
still in line with the mission and values, but like how teams operate, like a sales team versus like a support team are going to operate in different manners.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
you have different personalities on the team. And I think even more so for CX, I have found more often than not, a CX team as a whole feels so siloed.
Yeah.
Right? They feel like they're getting the brunt of all these things, and you have that frustration, and then it's just kind of like, well, all these other decisions are being made, and like, what about us? We're the ones who are talking to the customers. So like, I think that's so true.
Yeah. So I'd love to just like start at the beginning of your career.
Cool.
How did you get into customer experience, all of this?
I love it because I feel like it's such a random kind of connection. So fresh out of college, I got a role at a dental company, or like a dental office. And that was how I started. And so I was just kind of like doing the thing, getting to know patients and all of this stuff, which seems like very non-traditional. But for me, I love the connection that you have. And so like I always say, because I feel like I've taken this into so many different roles, is like a dental appointment, a dental visit is such a vulnerable visit. No one wants to go, right? Like people go into it anxious or like on the defense, afraid. And so oftentimes had a bad visit already, right? With someone that has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to really make them trust you and build that bond. And so that's kind of something that's stuck with me throughout my entire career.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically worked in a dental office, realized I'm not going to be a dentist. And so it was like, cool, there's clearly a cap here. And this was at the time when people really started talking about like startups and like the Google and the Facebook and all of that. And so actually like my first startup role that really like, I feel like I really learned so many of the ropes is actually at Quip. And so it was like startup dental. Oh, this makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So started there as like a CX associate. And also my first introduction to like subscriptions and like all of that whole mess, which I feel like is such a very specific like CX lane, subscriptions. And then from there, I also kind of dabbled in dental again at Tend, and I was their first operational hire. So Tend now I think has like 20 plus locations. And when I started, I actually managed their beta location. So like Tend didn't exist. We didn't know what the name was going to be. There were no locations. Everything was, which I felt like when that opportunity came about, I was kind of like, I feel like you always talk about being like that first hire, but like it's such a timing thing.
Yeah.
And so when that opportunity presented itself, I was like, I have to jump at it. Like I just have to.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. I mean, it was so much of like how to build relationships with other departments. I think that was one of like the biggest thing I took because it was so early. I was working with, you know, the VP of ops, head of design, head of brand, of marketing. Yeah, which is what I've taken since then to be like, okay, this is what works, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do I make sure I'm looping in all these people? And so I think that was such a great experience. And then the pandemic happened. And it was basically like, what's the worst place you could work? Dental. So ended up transitioning out of there, kind of took some time to figure out how I wanted to navigate the space, and then ended up at Billy. And then really had such a great time managing the team.
Can we tell the audience what Billy is?
So Billy is a subscription. Ooh, this is a good way to figure it out. Well, now they have a whole bunch of other products. They actually just recently launched a ton of products. But you're right. Usually when you think of Billy's going to be a subscription razor service. But yeah, my time there, just like managing, that was my first experience with the BPO team. Shout out NextRep. They were really great. They're like US based BPO that were like a really, really great partner. But I feel like that was my experience, probably one of the first times with like a larger company. So I think my time there also kind of really furthered my investment into like team management, right? And like who goes where, how do we run efficiently, how do we keep the team engaged, what does that look like? And so worked a lot there too with a lot of the other different departments. So like specifically I worked really closely like with the tech team and products, like digital products, which is really cool because that's when I started really learning more about like A/B testing and like what are the different things that we want to trial and like what do add-ons and like upselling, which was really, really cool.
Wait, I just want to say out loud. So like already, like you've talked about two different customer experience pathways that had to do one with startup stuff, right? And being ground zero, my favorite piece. I'm a 0 to 4 girl. I'm like straight up, I'm a 0 to 4 girl. But then also, you've also talked about Billy, like customer. And the point is, the reason I cut you off just to say this one thing is because customer experience isn't always about being support, right?
Absolutely.
Like you literally in these positions learned how to do retention marketing. You learned how to do marketing. You in the dental position with Tend, you learned to like work with design and these other departments that like are formulating like who you are as a CX person.
Absolutely.
And you're not just a support individual.
Absolutely. I think that's like the biggest thing. And I think even for me, I will say like earlier on in my career, it was so much unlearning, right? Of like, what does it mean to be in this like customer experience like role? But it's everything that touches the customer, right? So that makes sense. And it's funny because I always say, I think with certain newer companies or like when I'm coming into it, I think other departments, they're like, I'm this little fly in their ear, but I'm like, I need to know like what emails are going out. I need to know what customers are getting these emails. If we're getting an offer, right? Like what is the offer? If we're posting on these, I need to know because when customers are reaching out to us or they're seeing stuff, like how does that look as a brand to have the people that they're trusting, right? Us to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Or like, oh, what do you mean? Like, where did you find this? Or having to, you know what I mean? Like
so often the CX team is told last, or the opinion isn't asked of the CX team to talk about the things like so often. And it's so, honestly, it's so frustrating. Like 100%. It's so frustrating because I see this and like, I don't care. Like I'm going to look at the camera. If you're reviewing in, I'm going to look at the camera. I do not care if you tell me that, no, I always put my CX team in the know. I guarantee you out of the 20 different brands, I don't know, 20 is an exaggeration, but like across multiple people that I have advised, consulted, worked with, all of these things, guaranteed the biggest frustration is always that the team did not cross-functionally work with CX and tell them about that promotion.
Absolutely.
Every single time.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think I remember I had joined a team, and within a week of joining, they did a warehouse transition. And and literally we were told, okay, it should impact orders for about like a week, you know, and like we'll get back and it's fine, and ended up impacting orders for like 2 months.
Oh my God.
Going into like our busiest season.
Yeah.
And I remember our team, rightfully so, literally just started, and every one-on-one I had for like a month was someone crying because, you know, they're like, I don't know what to do. Everyone's so mad, like, you know, all, and rightfully so. I get it. And also, we're not being equipped with the information. So we're hounding and hounding and hounding. And then we're being met with, you know, people who, again, rightfully so, they're frustrated. It's not like they're controlling it as far as like ops or like the people who are, you know, coordinating and everything. But it was so much so of like, okay, I get there's things that we don't control, but like we need to be looped in, and I need to be in these meetings, and I need to have these point of contacts, because if you're not the right person, I need someone to tell me. And I had to advocate and push so hard. Like, we need to communicate to our customers. Yeah. We need to communicate to our impacted customers. Like, we need to let them know that we know what's going on, and like, we're sorry. Like, just take accountability for it. Just
proactive support.
This
is going to be the hot take episode.
Oh, listen. I always use the analogy, right? Like, if you're a waitress at a restaurant, you don't control to cook the food, right? And let's say you have all these tables and someone's waiting for food. But how different is your experience from a waitress or someone coming to you and saying like, hey, how are you? Can I get you something in the meantime? Like, hey, it looks like we're taking a little bit long. I'm going to go check on that. But like letting them know that you're there, versus the experience with like the waiter or waitress, and you don't hear from them. You order your food and you don't see them for like an hour because the food's not ready. Right? Like, something as small as that just, I feel like, makes such a difference.
Changes the experience. Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, like you're also, how you treat them is different, right? So like, you're going to treat them like, you know what, they know I'm here. They're doing what they can. They're obviously not cooking, or like they're not responsible for whatever I'm waiting for, but they're taking the time to treat me like a human being. Yeah. Right? And like acknowledge that maybe my experience isn't what they had hoped, but if there's anything in the meantime, right? But it's true, being proactive and just sending an email like, listen, we're going through this. We weren't expecting this. You know, we're really, really sorry. We're going to follow up once, or just something, right? And this isn't even so much to say to reach out and be like, hey, we're going to give you all this free stuff and this discount and, you know, whatever. Because I feel like sometimes that's the concern is if you do this, the customer is going to ask for something back or whatever. But it's just like, these are people's hard-earned money. Like, it's and I think like that's really what it comes down in this economy. Yeah. Like, come on.
No, totally. So we haven't even gotten to her Andy swim path yet. But we'll get there. We'll get there in this journey with Ashley and Jess.
Walk with me.
So one of my jobs that I also had was working in banking. And like I was a teller, and I was also a personal banker. Ironically enough, I studied for like all these like Series 7
no way.
I never got them, but I like definitely studied for them. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking.
You've lived so many lives. I love that for you.
I apparently I thought I was going to do finances from art school. Like, I'm
oh my God.
Yeah.
I love that.
No. Okay. Anyway, the point is though, is I worked at this bank, and one of the things that I always noticed about those customers is that finances are like the most sensitive subject in somebody's life. And like learning that early on, not even just about finances, but when we talk about service and like taking care of customers and like a journey and all of these things, it's like you want to be proactive and you want to share information with them so they can like get the right information. If they're giving you money to purchase your product, you better be telling them about the jams.
And it's even like, and you had this in a previous episode, I think with Michael at Hexclad, but it's like, if your friend or like someone that you love like spent their money, right? Like you would be like, hey, like I know you bought this, but like don't worry, right? Like you would give them heads up along the way, right? So it's like kind of like that same thing. It's just like you want these people to know that you value them and you value them as like a human being,
Right.
and like, you know, and they're, and again, to the point, like they're spending their money. They went out of their way to support us.
Yeah.
In some form or fashion. That's really what it is, right? Like we wouldn't be here if they didn't buy the product.
Yeah.
So
I know.
like have a little appreciation for the people. You have to.
Yeah. I know. I think it's really interesting. I think even as like marketers and like, not even just marketers, like people who are just like kind of behind the scenes all day long, you can't really, you can't necessarily touch all thousands and thousands of your customers, right? But you can at least set up some sort of automations to communicate with them, right?
And segment. Like sometimes it's not about emailing everyone. Like there's way to prioritize. I know. I always see it, and I will say I have had multiple arguments is maybe not the right word, but like multiple moments of trying to advocate. Like there's so many opportunities, like we're seeing it, right? Like CX sees it. If anyone knows like who's reaching out, what they're reaching out about, it's us. And it's like the power of just figuring out who those people are and sending the right kind of message. I mean, it just makes such a difference.
Yeah, totally. Changing gears completely though, because I'm kind of curious about this. What are some common misconceptions about being a customer experience manager?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because I think,
okay,
let me just say this. Sometimes I feel like CX managers like should be like the baseline of being strategic, taking actionable insights, like all of these pieces, right? Really helping with the team. But I think sometimes like like you don't see a lot of higher level CX roles. It's like a lot of times people say in like CX manager because like a lot of companies don't have higher than that, right? So I'm curious from your opinion, what do you think is a misconception of being like a CX manager?
Well, one, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in that like that title means different things to different companies.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I've been a CX manager and been a department head.
Yeah.
I've been a CX manager and, you know, just managed the team and like day to day and whatever, and maybe wasn't as a part of the strategic kind of planning of things. Yeah. So I've seen it both. I would say the biggest misconception, and I think we kind of touched on it, is that our voice is always the most trusted voice in CX. Or like that when it comes to like major decisions that affect customers, the assumption or the misconception that we're involved in those final decisions. Yeah. Which sucks. But I feel like that's a true, and I say that because I always get a little heartbroken when I hear about like poor CX experiences and stuff. Yeah. Because I feel like you associate it with the CX team oftentimes, and they're not the reason why, you know, the policy might be some way. They might not be the reason why, and like they might be advocating for like, hey, we should try and do this or whatever, but ultimately some, you know, whoever it is, oftentimes, I mean, depending on the company size, right, it's like the CEO, like, no, I don't want to do this. Or I've seen it, you know, where CX is under an ops pillar. Yeah. And realistically, whoever is the head of ops has no CX experience, right? And like doesn't have like, that thought, like doesn't have the same thinking like ways that we do. Right.
Well, I don't know. Yes, like a lot of times for sure. I think ops is interesting in like e-commerce because it's very like supply chain fulfillment, like that, sometimes finance ops, like all of those pieces. But I think if you have somebody who's like from supply chain and fulfillment ops, right?
There's definitely a difference. You're right.
There's definitely a difference there, especially if somebody has lived through a recall. Ooh. Because I've worked like not under the team. Yeah. But I've worked with people who have been in supply chain. I know. But my point is though, is like I have worked with people in supply chain and fulfillment and the ops side, and they were very much more in tune with customer experience because they've dealt with like a recall before. They've dealt with like having to be in the trenches with the team.
It's horrible. I mean, but even just like as a person, right? Like we buy things, we know what the experiences are. I think sometimes it's hard. I think you can always tell the difference when you're at a company or a part of a larger org that wants to commit to actually putting the customer first, right? I think it's one thing to say like, yeah, you know, we put our customers first, but then, you know, we don't want to do the bare minimum to turn something around, or we see it as just the cost and not the investment. And I do think it's really harder for products where, you know, where they don't necessarily buy multiples in 1 year, right? Or like products where they're just, you're not going to see the retention for a year, right? Or like you're not going to see that ROI. And I think that's also what makes it really challenging, as like how to speak in their language in a way that, you know, that makes sense or translates.
Yeah, totally. I'm not going to go here, but what I was thinking about in retention, because I like talk about this too much in episodes now, is bridal retention. Because I'm literally in the middle of like planning my wedding, and I just think it's so fascinating coming from like an e-commerce point of view. It's like, wow, this is like a one and done type of place, huh? Like how do you
Oh yeah, you have to, you can tell when I went like dress shopping and stuff. I mean, you can tell the difference between like a boutique and like a large, you know.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the experience is night and day.
I haven't done that yet, so I'll report back.
Please do. Yeah, I love it.
I'm flying to Pittsburgh just to like try on my dress or find a dress possibly.
Oh my god,
there's like a shop I want to go to.
Amazing. I mean, it makes such a difference. By
Instagram.
Honestly, I buy so many things now from Instagram and TikTok Shop. Yeah. I really wish there was a way to remove, like, to shop so easy.
But like, they don't want it that way. Consumerism,
I know. I know. I can't. But yeah, please let me know how that goes.
I will. Okay. I do want to make it to Andy Swim because I think that this customer profile is very interesting. I know you're like no longer there anymore. We have like, you know, we'll talk about Caraway at the end. Don't worry, everybody. But I want to talk about Andy Swim because I think it's such a seasonal customer.
Oh.
How did you guys well, first of all, how did you end up at Andy Swim?
So, how did I end up at Andy Swim? An old colleague of mine was like leading their people team. And so she was like, hey, we have this role opening up. I think it would be a perfect fit. And kind of like looking at the product and whatnot. And I was like, you know, let me see, like I'll have a conversation. And it was one of those opportunities again where it was to lead the department. Like previously, I think the department was more support. And so the goal was, how do we elevate the experience? How do we do more? And basically my understanding going into it, which was true, was like I would really have a lot of leverage on like, what do we use? How do we go about things? Just like really building the department. And so, yeah, that was kind of, you know, went through the process and it was a really, really good fit. And so ended up there. But it's funny that you mentioned bridal because one of my team members at Andy had come from a bridal background.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's funny because, right, swim, to your point, is kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
Like you buy swim really one time, right? You do your stuff beginning of summer or before spring break or whatever. And ideally you're really not buying another suit or like a large order again until maybe next year.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also not a product really that people need per se.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
My one Andy Swim swimsuit I've had it for like 3 years.
They're great.
I know.
I do. I really love their suits. I think I will say this. So this is what's really interesting about what I found going into e-com for like clothing and swimwear is obviously, you know, you have size charts and all of these things, but realistically, I think the reality is like not every suit looks the same on one body.
Yeah.
And I think like that was a really interesting challenge to figure out.
Yeah.
Is like, how do you communicate that in a way that translates, in a way that's respectful,
yeah,
in a way that you're not dissuading them for purchasing, but you want them to purchase what's for them.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was definitely, I will say, I learned so much at Andy.
Really?
I
love that.
really, really did. I think too, what was challenging is like, there wasn't really like the Andy customer. Like, I don't feel like I could just point out and it's like a specific demographic. Like,
Interesting.
which is very challenging.
Yeah.
And frustrating to kind of like figure out what to try. I mean, like in ways that makes it kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
You can try like different things and whatnot. But like we had an older demographic, like a much older demographic than I've ever really dealt with, right? Like you have like 60 to 70-year-olds, like women love Andy.
Really?
Love Andy.
Oh man, like that actually really surprises me, only
Wow.
because what I see on like the influencer marketing and elsewhere is like not.
Well, there's also like a really hard, I feel like that's like a hard, there are certain influencers that are definitely in that space who I'm
Yeah.
like kind of obsessed with actually.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like who, I don't know, I just feel like it's such a hard demographic to market to, but I feel like
Yeah.
they're definitely like our word of mouth demographic.
Yeah, I could see that. I could
Like,
totally
big
see
time.
that.
Big time.
Guess what, fam? The customer community is back. If you're not already familiar with the community, you can sign up to get your questions answered, discuss best practices, and connect with other professionals in the CX space. Check it out today at community.customer.com. See you there. I'm curious to hear from your thoughts, like switching from Billy to Andy, which is like Billy is like very subscription heavy, to like Andy, which is like kind of a one and done. You don't see that customer for a while.
Yep.
Like what did that like transition look like to you, and like trying to communicate to customers and thinking about retention and all of those things?
That's a great question. I think the biggest change was, I think for Billy, it required, number one, Billy required less education, right? Like this is a product people know, they know razors, they generally know how to use them, right? Like that's not the type of inquiries you get. I would say Billy was definitely was definitely more like cancellation, swap products, like definitely something more, the inquiries that we would get specifically from customers were definitely more kind of like cut and clear. And so a lot of our team was invested in like other tasks, right? So like our objectives were, you know, working with the other departments and kind of getting feedback on things and whatnot. Versus Andy, there was so much education, right? And so much education on, a lot of times, you know, women would get the product, but maybe weren't like wearing it right, or like weren't adjusting straps.
More education.
Or
yeah.
it was huge on education. And like something that was really cool at Andy was we got the opportunity to work really, because it was a smaller company, we really worked closely with like our social media team. And like, so we did like a bunch of different videos and kind of like, hey, like this is how we adjust and we style. And like we advocated really, really hard. Or like, how do you put your cups back in your suit? Or things like that, because those were a lot of the inquiries that we were getting. And also I think at Andy, there was a lot more emphasis on like a win back strategy, because again, it was just like re-education. So like one of the initiatives that I really pushed and we got going was like reaching out to all of our negative reviews or certain return reasons to be like, hey, we want to learn more. And oftentimes there were people who were leaving us not great reviews who still had their suit and like didn't return it. So even more so, there was a way to either educate them on like, hey, you said this was your issue. Let's like go on a video call and like go through how to update this. Or people would schedule fit consults, which was something that we offered.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. Shout out to Boutique. Amazing. And you could schedule a video call. And what made Boutique specifically really great to use was like you can set up what's it called, like a like their closet for them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if you answered certain questions and I'm like, you know what, there's suits I have in mind. I can have that all ready for you. By the time you hop into the call, we're hopping right into things.
Wow.
Yeah. Or we would have some people who would schedule a fit consult, already had a suit and was like, I don't really like this. I want to exchange.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk through what don't you like about the suit, right? So like if it's the way the cut is on them. And again, everybody is different. So like a cool hack that we would use. So like for me, I'm more bottom heavy than on top, but to go up a size for me didn't always make sense. So I would do a long torso because it would add the fabric lengthwise and this would fit so much more comfortable. And that's not everyone's going to think that way, or not everyone really understands what it's like, what that means for the product to be like a long torso. So, yeah, I mean, the biggest transition was definitely more relationship building, more education, and I think more opportunity to connect, which was huge.
That's a great customer experience, right? It's like about connecting. It's not just about like being in the tickets the whole time. It's about being in different points of your customer journey and like personalizing that journey, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because then, I mean, the hope is you spend that time with that customer, right? Doing those fit consultations and like being at these extra touch points, and then they're loyal to you.
Oh, absolutely. And they're telling their friends, right? They're telling their friends. I can't tell you how many people have found from like a family member, or like they went on vacation with someone and they were like, oh, I saw, this person and I bought it, or what have you.
Yeah.
The other interesting about having like the older demographic is oftentimes mothers would buy it for their daughters.
Yeah.
Which was also really shocking that people didn't like internally when we would tell like other team members that, they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, like people are buying these as gifts. Like there are just so many different ways that people are hearing about it. But I think, we would be remiss to like underestimate how valuable it was just to like do that, because it's true.
Yeah.
It might not be this season, but they're going to be like, oh yeah, Andy was great. I'm going to go back to them. And we would see people year over year.
Granted, we're having this conversation right now and I'm like, but I do every time I pick up my Andy suit, because it's lasted so long. Granted, I wasn't the ideal customer in like these like education channels, right? But what got me was like on social channels and like seeing other people wearing it. There's like this one girl with like pink hair that always wears this white bathing suit.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. I see her on TikTok all the time.
Whoever you are in my algorithm constantly, and every summer.
We are your demographic.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? Like your targeting has worked, Andy Swim. But it's so funny because the same girl, whoever, we're going to find her for this clip. That same girl, every single year around summertime, since that content has been out, I'm targeted by it. So my phone is probably listening to me right now saying, Andy Swim,
Oh,
Andy
you're absolutely going to get it.
And I'm going to see the girl with the pink hair and the white bathing suit on my reels.
Absolutely. One thing that was really cool that Andy did that was really awesome during my time there was they did a comfortable looks good on you. And basically what that campaign was one suit, the Amalfi, which I love.
It's the Amalfi.
Oh my God. It's perfect. It's literally like I have yet to find someone that it's not like just like the best suit.
Yeah.
But basically they did photo shoots across, I don't know, maybe like 50 people.
Yeah.
Across all different sizes. And you could see different size, women with different body types wearing it. But what was so cool to me from like a CX perspective and someone who's trying to like virtually help women find their right suit is you see how a small, like there's no small body shape or there's no like large one. The bodies are completely different. And so that was so cool to have that as a reference point for customers.
Yeah. Not
Not just as like, hey, like this is a cool thing we're doing, but like, cool, you can see yourself or someone who looks like you in a suit to kind of like get that gauge.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like really important. Like, I think lately I've been talking to a lot of people in the beauty industry and the apparel industry. And I think that's so important. Like when we talk about like a customer's journey, a customer's experience, not all of your customers are the same, right? So exactly what you were saying about Andy Swim, it's like, you don't have one ideal customer. It's like everybody is technically an Andy Swim customer, right? But I think it's really important that like, especially in swimsuits, beauty, like anything of like that pertains to like fit or like a look, you should have inclusivity about like with other people, right? Different bodies, different shades, different everything, right? Like, because not everything is going to fit for that one customer. And I think it's like, and I think sometimes like I think like we're getting better as a society doing this, but I think it's really interesting seeing it, because I think sometimes like brands subconsciously do it or not subconsciously. I'm sorry. I think some brands unintentionally do it.
Yes.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tricky. I think from like a CX perspective with Andy too, I think what was really interesting is like not every customer is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Each demographic has like their typical outreach that is completely different from the other, right? And like how you approach it is very differently, right? So like an older demographic, they might be reaching out more so for help with how to exchange, how to do like things that we might have self-service tools for, but right, they're not used to it. Exactly. They're just not. So like our patience and how we approach it is going to be a little different, and so like we have to make space for that, because we have to meet them where they are, right? And then you have the other demographic that's, you know, maybe used to Amazon 2-day shipping and is upset that something's not right. Like it's just all of these different things. And I think the key that we found, which was great for us, was we got to meet them where they are. And the reality is like there were certain things that had to be universal truth that we had to like agree on. And I think trying to be more proactive was like a huge one that we learned.
Yeah.
And I think too, when I joined Andy was like, it was 2021, which was like a very weird year for e-com.
Yeah.
It was like when
it was like the boom.
Yeah, it was just like a very weird, and then like to go the year after, like it was just like such a weird time trying to like figure out where do we meet people, like what do people want to spend their money on. I think that was it too. Like a lot of our demographic are like moms or like millennials and people who like maybe the year prior or whatnot, like we're spending this extra income and now we're like, oh no, I want to spend it on something else, or I'm not spending it right now. So it was just a very interesting experience. But again, I feel like I learned so much that I didn't expect from retail in that way.
Yeah. You know what I think is really interesting? Like, and I've been having some like conversations about this, but what I find really interesting going from the pandemic e-commerce, right? Like pandemic, e-commerce, big e-commerce boom, lots of e-com companies, D2C. But now I'm seeing people switch back into retail because retail has like more velocities, like selling in like stores, just like more you can spread out. But like, and I wouldn't say I'm like seeing that as a huge trend, but what I'm seeing is like definitely more omni-channel for sure. But what I've also started noticing is the consumer behavior is shifting. People really want to be in person more.
It's so funny. I think with Andy specifically, what I saw, or even actually with Billy, because right at my time at Billy, I was there when they, I think, first got into Walmart, and since then, they're in like all of these other retailers now, and like that was like an investment that they did. And I think kind of the same with Andy. I think they do have one like flagship store in Malibu, and they had done a few pop-ups here and there. But I think what's interesting to your point, which I think is kind of like a mix of the two, is I find that a lot of brands now are doing partnerships, but not necessarily doing their standalone retail.
Right.
But that's so hard from like a CX perspective, because these different merchants treat their customers completely different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, from the partnership perspective, but like you go into Walmart, Target, or all of these places, right? Like you can't control that customer's data anymore. You can't control that customer's experience anymore.
Yep.
It's like you completely lose it. And I think the takeaway here for anybody listening is actually like, if you're focusing on like going into omni-channel, you better make sure that your CX is really tight, but like not a CX and like, oh, I'm going to take the tickets in my process. Like the culture of your CX is like super tight, you know? And so then you kind of like develop that out for the brand experience when you go into retail.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's just like, I feel like even if it's in different merchants, if you have a strong brand, right? So like, even if you have like a little touch point where it's like, I don't know, like on the tag, you have a QR code that they can do, right? And then it's all this product knowledge and how to contact us and whatever, like that will resonate with them more, and they won't necessarily maybe associate the other stuff, you know, if that's the case. Like, I just feel like there are so many opportunities that I think a lot of brands sometimes forget about.
Right.
To make sure that when someone is purchasing their stuff, even if it's not like directly from them, that they think of you, right? And they associate that with you versus like, you know, like if you go to like TJ Maxx, right? They have all these different brands and all this stuff. 9 times out of 10, you like rarely notice the tag or like where the brand is, right? So like, what can you do to set that apart? How do you educate your team on it too? Because also the reality is, if they don't like the product and they bought it from somewhere else, they will remember you enough to email.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or talk about you online.
The worst.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what's happening. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have any of the information, which is so frustrating because those are oftentimes so, you know, they're so loud.
Yeah. And also from a support perspective too, because I've like run into this where it's like, you can't, like, you have your customer who maybe like purchase at Walmart, Target, wherever, retail store, and they had a bad experience, but then you can't really like give them anything back.
Exactly.
So it's like, what are you supposed to do?
Exactly. Or it's like, how do you account for it, right? Like, it's like, if you did want to do something like from a financial standpoint or like all these things, like, what does that look like? Like, what options are available to us? And there's nothing more frustrating than a conversation and being like, but like, I can't find you.
Yeah.
Like, I can't charge, like, you know what I mean? Like, or I love when people are like, just like charge my card for this if I'm gonna just send me it. Like, it's fine. And it's like, it's not how this works.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Wait, okay. So I want to completely switch gears. Well, I have one question before I switch this gear.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on AI? In CX.
I think, and I think we agree on this, I feel like AI is very powerful, but I feel like it's powerful as like a support tool for a team. I think that if you want to tell me how you feel about your CX team, tell me that you only have automated. Like, if you only have AI, like, that's all that I need to know.
I love.
Or like, if you refuse to have like any internal team, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Like,
straight up.
You don't care about the customer. That's literally like, it just, yeah.
Wait, I'm going to say a real hot take that has nothing to do with AI. Or your team is completely 100% outsourced.
Oh, absolutely.
Like 100%.
Absolutely.
Like, you don't even have it. Like, you don't even have a real CX like team internally.
You don't care.
Yeah.
It's
that's a hot
call
take.
a spade. You don't care. Like,
yeah. And I get it. I like absolutely understand from a cost perspective, but in order to make, and like granted we went from AI to BPOs, in order to make that BPO deliver the right brand experience for you, you still need to have somebody internally writing the brand voice, building the process, doing all the things.
100%.
Otherwise, they're going to come in and build out a full new like CX infrastructure that doesn't have anything to actually do with your, well, I wouldn't say it doesn't have anything to do with your brand, but like might not exemplify the mission and values. Like, I don't think people realize that like managing BPOs, whether you have one person internally that manages the BPO or you have a small team internally and you like subsidize with like BPO, there needs to be somebody owning the customer experience 100%. To train them, because they're still human beings on the other end.
Absolutely.
And they're not also a third party outside of your brand.
Oh, 100%. And then on top of that, you always get new products, right? You get new SKUs, you do all this.
Or random rogue marketing campaigns.
Like, who's keeping them in the know?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't have someone dedicated to them,
yeah,
how are you going to make sure that you're dedicating, or whoever, where's the communication?
Yeah.
Like, if no one's taking accountability for that, then what? Oh,
yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I know it was like a real hot take there, but like, I don't have anything wrong with a BPO, like at all. Like, it makes sense for like some brands, like that's not the point. But all I'm saying is like, if you care about your customer experience, you better be putting an effort to train that BPO to help you. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. I I definitely think there's no way around it.
Yeah.
You can have a BPO handle, let's say, all of your customer inquiries.
Yeah.
I think that's understandable. I've seen teams that do it really well. To be fair, I've seen teams that do it really horribly.
Yeah.
But like, you don't stand a chance if you don't have someone internally managing that relationship, managing what they know, training. Absolutely. Hands down, I agree. That really shouldn't be a hot take.
Yeah.
At this, like,
but I see it all often. I literally see it often, and I'm just like, and listen, I know people about to be coming for me in this episode, okay? Straight up, I know people are gonna come after me.
I'm right there with you. So
like, I'm gonna be real. Yeah. Like, if you care about your customer experience, you better be writing SOPs. You better be informing those people.
Absolutely.
You better be spending time training those people, because your cost effectiveness will cost you more in the long run.
Absolutely. 100%. I could not agree more.
I mean, I've already talked about a bad customer experience, but I'll talk about a recent one, right? You know, the ones we find, you know, I don't know what I was buying, a Brahmi or something, right? Like a tank top and the
stop. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I was like super stoked, and it was like a buy one get one. I was like, oh, okay.
I am gonna laugh if we had the exact same experience.
Oh man, I can't. We don't name names. We'll name names off camera, okay? But I bought a Brahmi, okay, to buy one get one. And I was like super excited. I was like, yeah, summertime. I'm gonna be doing this. And like the sizing chart was like so awful on the site. Like I ended up getting it. It was like too big, so like just wasn't fitting right. Then I get like, but I like got multiple sizes just to like try. Mm-hmm. So then I email into support an absolute week to get back to me. And then I was like, hey, can I exchange this? Because their exchange policy was like, you have to email us within this time frame and do these things. And like, it was like the most, I don't read enough to like know what's going on. And so anyway, I email in, it takes them a week to get back to me. They get back to me and they're like, yeah, no problem. We'll send you a new one. I was like, okay, well, like, how do I exchange it? And I was like, oh, like, I get to keep this on me. Okay, like, that's really nice. Like, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then they send me a new one, but they send me the wrong sizes. And they don't send me the buy one, get one deal, because I had, like, multiple of them, right? So they didn't, like, listen to the inquiry. But not only that, I actually did read the return policy, and, like, I was supposed to send back the other products, but the agent never gave me the information to send it back. So now I just have, like, I literally have 10 Brahmis that, like, honestly, I only wear one of them.
And it's indoors only because they don't fit.
And they don't fit. They don't fit.
It's, see, and like, think of it, right? Cost effectiveness. Look at all that wasted product.
Yeah.
You're probably never going to shop there again.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just think, like, I think
the downfall is, and like, granted, this is outside looking in. I have no real, like, I don't know for sure, but I think really what the downfall is like the lack of training for that team on the right policies and like what to do, right?
Yeah.
So cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
You know?
It's so short-sighted.
Yeah.
And I think like that's what I struggle with. And I think what you're seeing now, especially with a lot of startups, which I think is really interesting, and maybe this is a hot take, I don't know, but
the hot take episode.
It's just like, you have all these companies, right? You work with them and they talk about having an entrepreneurial spirit and all of this and this buy-in and stuff. And it's like, but then you're, gonna not have a team that's there, like, and trust a team to take care of your brand.
And a part of your culture.
Like,
and all of these places will tell you they're an extension of your team. I believe
they're
that.
one big happy family.
I absolutely, like, yeah. All right. I will say I've had very positive BPO experiences. I'm not like saying, I'm not dogging it,
absolutely.
Right? But I've had very positive experiences, but in order to teach them the brand voice, in order to teach them the culture, to keep them abreast to like what the things are going on, it was a lot of work. That's fair. Lot of work.
I will say I have noticed now, like in recent years specifically, there are some BPOs that really, really get it right.
Yeah.
I very short-lived, but like at Caraway.
They'll all tell you they'll get it right, though, by the way.
What?
They'll all tell you that they'll get it right.
Oh, well, I will say that. They'll all say that. They'll all say that, but like I said, like Next Rep at Billy, they were incredible.
Yeah.
Like they were really
FCR
great.
at Feastables, very great.
Oh, amazing.
Partner Hero.
At Caraway, they used Boulder, and I will say
Yeah.
this, in this very short time that I've been involved, I haven't seen a BPO be truly as integrated as I've seen, which was really cool. And like, obviously, you know, you hear about it, whatever, but like to see them in the meetings, in the channels, incorporate, even talk to other departments.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not used to that. But it's amazing, right? Like, if you're gonna do it, that's how you do it, right? But 100%, I think, like, if you're looking at a BPO thinking it's a shortcut, you've done it wrong.
That's the point.
Yeah,
that's
you've
the
done
point.
it wrong.
If you've made it this far into us talking about BPOs, that is the literal point. If you think that this is going to be a shortcut to get you to the best customer experience, you are dead wrong.
Oh yeah,
you're dead wrong.
It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, it's a no. It's a no. Okay, wait. So listen, I do want to touch on Caraway real quick, but we only have time for like one question, okay? So super proud of Ashley. She just recently joined Caraway with our homegirl Nancy Gerd.
Shout out Nancy.
We love Nancy, but I would love to know just like, you know, a quick TLDR, because I'm curious, like starting different jobs, starting different CX roles, how do you quickly adapt to different CX cultures?
I'll be honest. I feel like when I interview, I try to get the gist early on to make sure that it's something where I feel like I can just be myself. Like that's my goal, right?
Authenticity.
Yeah. And like, I will say this, I've never, and this isn't like to brown nose or anything, but I've never interviewed with a team where it was like, I could talk to them how I'm talking to you right now throughout that process and not feel like, ooh, was I being unprofessional? Was I being, like, I'm able to show up. And so it's kind of cool. And I think with switching jobs, the key is like joining a team or joining a culture where like you can show up authentically as yourself. And like, I think the reality is, and interviewing, right? Like interviewing different places, I could definitely tell the difference in interviewing and feeling like, okay, right? I have to sit this way and do it. And especially I will say this, and this was really tricky for me in this interview process, is just like for the level of experience that I have now, how I go into different interviews, it's different than it was a few years ago, because now I have, you know, a certain level of expertise and I'm going into it looking for different kind of roles. But it was very, that was something that I was concerned about. And what was really cool was like, it felt like such a good fit. And it wasn't just necessarily the people that I would be like directly working with. Like even when I met Mark, who's like the VP of Ops.
Mark, such a sweet man.
I'm obsessed.
I met him at a conference once.
He's so great.
Shout out to you, Mark.
Yes, shout out to Mark. Honestly, he was like, just like talking to him.
He's where I got to land the plane from. I don't know if I said that on this episode, but like it's sorry. Okay, just talking like I'll come back to that.
You're so good. But like he's great. And so like to me, that made it really easy to transition. Because I will say I was very fortunate at Andy too. Like I felt like I could be myself and show up and do my work and whatever. But like at Caraway, it didn't really feel like I had to like try and figure out where I fit.
Yeah.
It was like everyone was like, hey, we made this space for you.
Yeah.
Or rather, it feels like that, right? Because I'm on day 2, so let me not get ahead of myself.
I
but like,
that. Yeah, it's literally day 2 in her job.
But it was like I'm obsessed already, which is like very cool. But like, it's just like, hey, here's a space for you. Make it like whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, here are the things that you need to know. Obviously, like, feel very prepared. Here's like all of these resources, but like, you have the freedom to kind of like, however your brain works and how you're doing it. Like, let's talk about it and work together and collaborate. So it's been really cool.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. So authenticity, right? Like sussing out the authenticity in the interview process. And then like you feel the most free when you can like build the CX in the way that you want to.
Yeah. I definitely think I think that's like very well said.
Cool. Ashley, I'm so sad we're at the end.
I know. How is it already?
I don't even know. But here's the jam. Because we gas our homies up in here, okay? Where can the people find you?
Ooh, on What do you mean, like for like
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, Ashley Harris. Yeah, that's pretty much where I am.
Yeah, if you ever want to jam about
Please, yeah,
swimwear,
feel free.
subscription,
All the things,
nail
I know,
plans,
dental, right?
dental.
I'm here. Love to chat, connect with the peeps.
All right, Ashley is the best of the best, my friend. So I'll definitely put her link in the show notes. And I appreciate you guys all tuning in for another episode of The Juice. And I will talk to you all next Thursday. Never can get that outro right, so I will talk to you next Thursday. See ya. Hey, wow, you made it to the end of the episode. That means that you like me and I like you, which also means you should subscribe to this show.